Dragon Ball Legends is heading into its 8th year, and it's looking to be a promising year.
Well, I'm not going to say anything, but 2026 is going to be pretty crazy. Let's just say that. Expect some crazy things to happen in 2026. It's going to be good.
We've had many ups throughout the years and many downs. However, I think 2025 is the year where we've had the most downs. From the Daima meta to the 7th anniversary to supporters being introduced and many more bad decisions. I think 2025 is the worst year of Dragon Ball Legends, and in this video, I'll be discussing why. Before we start, I want to say thank you for the amazing support on the Gohan video. I'll be making a lot more content similar to this, so if you guys do enjoy that, consider subscribing. But for now, let's talk about the year Dragon Ball Legends died. 2025 for Legends started off on a good note. We started the year off with the long-awaited LF Gogeta Blue Zenkai, who was more than a viable PvP option, even though he was primarily Zenkai'd to be a Zenkai buffer for Ultra Beast Gohan. Next up, we got two good LF releases, LF Future Gohan and Trunks, and LF Merge Zamasu. LF Gohan and Trunks had impeccable animations and brought a new type of revival, Succession, where the unit starts off as a tag unit, then it becomes just Trunks once their first life was taken. LF Merge Zamasu, despite what Garesh thinks, was a good unit. The issue with Zamasu was his gauge was wonky as it switched between attack and defense, but he had amazing damage and could handle Ultra Majin Vegeta and Ultra Beast Gohan. However, LF Merge Zamasu would suffer a fate worse than LF Majin Vegeta, as he would get replaced with the next premium release, Ultra Perfect Cell. Ultra Perfect Cell would be our first Ultra release of the year, and he was phenomenal. He had some of the highest damage in the game, and his anti-endurance made him a constant threat in PvP. The community was desperate for a unit like Ultra Perfect Cell, as Ultra Majin Vegeta was dominating the game alongside Beast Gohan, but Cell could make quick work of both of them, and Ultra Cell would become one of the most used characters for that reason. Ultra Perfect Cell wouldn't last very long in the limelight though, as Dragon Ball Legends would capitalize on the new Dragon Ball anime, Dragon Ball Daima, by releasing Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta and Super Saiyan 4 Daima Goku just a month after they premiered in the anime. And what should have been a high period for Dragon Ball Legends would instead turn out to be one of the worst periods of PvP we've ever had, and it's all because of him. Daima would completely take over PvP with the release of LF Super Saiyan 4 Daima Goku, as the team would not be complete. They had a powerhouse in Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta, they had support with Ku, and Super Saiyan 4 Goku was the glue that put everything together by having great utility. The Daima team would be very annoying to fight against for two main reasons. Number one, their ability to manipulate sub counts. The Daima team had multiple ways of reducing their sub counts, as Super Saiyan 4 Goku gave a permanent reduction of -1 to Daima allies, and -1 to allies when hit with an Ars card up to 4 times whenever he came onto the battlefield. Majin Ku reduced ally sub counts by 2 when hit with an enemy attack, and he could show his own sub count by 3 for 20 timer counts when he used a green card. And Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta also reduced ally sub count by 2 when he entered the battlefield. So no matter who enters the battlefield, ally sub counts would be reduced, and this would pair incredibly well with Super Saiyan 4 Goku's buff removal, as it would allow him to get his dual cover change off pretty consistently, and Majin Ku's constant 15% team heal every switch out would make Daima near unkillable. Not to mention, all of these characters would have some form of disruption, whether it's sealing your main ability, sealing your Rising Rush, destroying your cards. The Daima team would slow you down at every turn. And the second reason why they would be very annoying to fight against is Majin Ku's RNG. Majin Ku's design is a masterclass on what not to do when designing a character for a PvP based game. Majin Ku at his core is a support character. He gives Daima allies more damage and healing, which is pretty standard, but the issue with his design is how much RNG he has in his kit. Every strike arts he uses, he has a 30% chance to inflict paralysis, and paralysis is one of the dumbest mechanics in any PvP based game ever.
Are you stupid?
A random chance for the game to freeze you in place at any moment during a match multiple times in a row.
What the f were they thinking?
We hated it when Hero Hercule was doing it back in the day, and we hated it even more against Daima because at least Hero Hercule could get one carded. Daima was near unkillable, so for the entire game, you could get paralyzed at any point and just lose the match. But not only did they give him the chance to paralyze you, they also gave him a 20% feint chance on his blue and a 30% feint chance on his ultimate arts card. I think this clip alone would encapsulate just how stupid Majin Ku was.
Bruh. Huh?
Go on, no.
Really, nigga?
This design is a complete slap to the face of the community because no one enjoys these mechanics. A feint or paralysis proc could determine an entire match, and you combine that with Daima's constant switching, disruption, and tanking, and it made for an horrific PvP experience. The Daima meta would be the first red flag for Dragon Ball Legends in 2025, but the community would remain hopeful for future releases as the developers will drop a newsletter regarding how they would balance future characters. We call this the new Dragon Ball Legends philosophy. The development team identified three main issues with how they were designing characters previously. Number one was the homogenization of abilities, meaning characters were no longer unique. Two, the increase in characters with high combo power, meaning more characters could get off high combos quite easily. And number three, increase in complexity and length of character abilities, meaning characters currently had essays as their kits. To fix these issues, they would plan to reduce combo length, reduce length of special cover change, reduce the length of element disadvantage notification, and summarize character kits in an easier way for the community to read them. The community was ecstatic at this news, as this change was very much needed because in 2024, we would get absurdly powerful meta units who could do everything, which ramped up the power creep to a high degree. So this newsletter got the community hopeful that we would have a very balanced PvP meta moving forward. However, with future releases, it would become apparent that this new philosophy would be a load of bullshit. The first issue with this philosophy was apparent with the following Dragon Ball Saga campaign, as these new characters would be far worse than older characters due to them having low numbers and a kit that was bare bones. Having characters that do everything and then releasing characters that don't do everything would cause the new characters to be useless. But the second issue with the philosophy is that they would release characters that adhere to the new philosophy kit-wise and some characters that don't, which would cause a huge imbalance in the meta. I'll touch back on the new philosophy for certain characters throughout the video, but by now, the entire community has turned the new philosophy into a meme, as they literally lied to our faces about the changes they would make for future characters. So now we're getting close to the 7th anniversary. The community has high expectations as they hyped it up a year in advance, and we're expecting it to be better than the 6th year anniversary. So what did they do a few years before the reviews and stuff? They decided to leak the Part 1 LFs, Super Saiyan Blue Evo Vegeta and MUI Goku. For some reason, they accidentally scheduled a tweet to come out days before intended, and the entire community quickly learned who we're getting in Part 1. This is not a good way to start off your anniversary, as it completely devoids the reviews and stuff of any anticipation and excitement. The reviews and stuff for Part 1 was very lackluster. As I mentioned earlier, we already knew what characters we'd be getting, but the characters themselves didn't have anything exciting in their kits. There were no new mechanics shown, which is disappointing considering last year we got synchro gauges and they didn't showcase anything that utilized the massive RAM update we received earlier in the year. The reviews and stuff was also filled with advertisements for things that had nothing to do with Dragon Ball Legends specifically, so it was unnecessarily long. Overall, the anniversary would start off on the wrong foot, but there was still hope for it to turn around. Remember the new philosophy they preached about earlier? Super Saiyan Blue Evo Vegeta is the perfect example of this philosophy being complete nonsense, as they made Super Saiyan Blue Evo Vegeta a long combo character, while in the philosophy, they said they wanted to reduce combo length. It just doesn't make any sense. Another thing that made Part 1 lackluster is the fact that Evil Vegeta was so much worse than MUI Goku. The Part 1 banner came out and you could literally skip Evil's banner and not miss anything, as Evil really didn't have any impact on the metagame whatsoever.
Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose.
And as you could guess, the meta was still pretty bad in Part 1 of the 70th anniversary. Daima was still running around, and UMV made a resurgence as he could kill MUI Goku and Evil Vegeta quite easily with his lock-in ultimate. And MUI Goku being MUI Goku meant that passive play would come back, and this MUI having a counter green card made it even worse. So now we're heading to Part 2 of the 7th anniversary, and we're hoping for a big change, as we've had weeks of no content or not enough content thus far. The Part 2 reviews and stuff comes along and they reveal LF Saiyan Saga Vegeta and LF Saiyan Saga Goku, but the biggest reveal was the introduction of dynamic area battles and the new overdrive mechanic. With dynamic area battles, you will tap attack the opponent and send them to the ground, where nothing new happens except for dust particles flying across your screen. It's just a scenery change that didn't impact the core gameplay at all, and it made the game run worse, as it was and still is poorly optimized. The overdrive mechanic was also a negative addition in my opinion, as it just adds another layer of RNG, which you didn't need with Rising Rush already being in the game. People keep saying that it speeds up the gameplay, but that's just not true when most matches nowadays go to timer, and overdrive literally makes your units more tanky. But dynamic area battles was a net negative, as it made the game unplayable on certain maps, and it doesn't do anything at all except give certain characters different effects whether you're on the ground or not, which is a lazy design choice. It's been 7 months since the release of dynamic area battles and they haven't improved it at all. The developers even mentioned that they've been working on this for years, and
We've been planning dynamic area battle for years now.
And for this to be the final product is very disappointing. I will say though, the new animations when a unit gets KO'd is pretty good. Kaken Goku and Saiyan Saga Vegeta would change the meta quite a bit, as Saiyan Saga would become the best team in the game, as it would be impossible to kill due to their broken defensive equipment, Vegeta having revival, and Kaken Goku being the tankiest unit in the game with his gauge. This made the meta a lot better than what it was in Part 1, as Kaken Goku would render Ultra Majin Vegeta useless, and Daima would no longer be a top tier team from this point onwards. But even with the Part 2 meta being quote unquote better than the Part 1 meta, it was still very boring to fight against Saiyan Saga when it would just go to timer almost every single time. And so far, in totality, the 7th anniversary has been made up to this point. Part 1 was a bust and Part 2 was better, but it still left much to be desired for the super duper 7th anniversary that they hyped it up to be. So with Part 3 coming around, the community is entertaining the idea of double ultras, as we're expecting them to do something massive to turn the 7th anniversary around.
Dang. Take a look at this video.
You wanted me my strongest, so here I am.
The reveals and stuff for Part 3 was amazing. They revealed Ultra Super Saiyan Namek Goku with a brand new KO guard mechanic, and they did a fake out revealing Ultra Full Power Frieza as well. This reveals and stuff is up there with the likes of the first annual reveal and the 2021 Fest reveal as the best reveals and stuffs of all time. They did everything right when it comes to the character choice, animations, and the community's hype was now through the roof. Too bad the hype will be short-lived, as PvP would take a turn for the worst, as both these ultras would make Part 1 and Part 2 units useless, as they countered them directly. Ultra Namek Goku could kill Evil very easily, and his lock-in ability made Saiyan Saga ineffective, as he just locking Kaken Goku and rushed them. Ultra Full Power Frieza was a full-blown counter to MUI Goku, as his active gauge made MUI's dodge gauge useless, and Frieza's damage would just nuke MUI Goku off the map. These two ultras worked incredibly well together, and this would make for a very stale PvP meta, as it would be dominated by the both of them and whatever third unit you could just fit on a team. Both ultras did not follow the new philosophy, as Ultra Frieza could combo for days with his active gauge and get access to cover now frequently, while Ultra Namek Goku was a jack of all trades character who did high damage, supported his teammates, and had a team-wide revival. All of this could have been avoided if the developers restricted these ultras to separate teams instead of incentivizing you to run them together. A great example of this is Daima Super Saiyan for Goku, who got restricted solely to Daima, as he would no longer have indestructible if used elsewhere. To wrap everything up, the Super 7th anniversary was a total failure. While it did give us an abundance of resources and one of the best reviews and stuff ever, it still didn't surpass or even come close to the 6th anniversary. By the end of it, the 7th anniversary had multiple weeks of no content, which is inexcusable, and there were so many units that should have gotten a unique equipment or a Zenkai during this time, but instead we were left with nothing but a stale PvP meta. The most important aspect of Dragon Ball Legends is the PvP, and if your PvP meta is just the same units over and over with no diversity, then you lose a lot of the player base, and that was very apparent this year, as it would be well documented that less players are playing PvP post-anniversary. So far we've talked about the toxic Daima meta, the fake and new philosophy, and the disappointing 7th anniversary, and you would think to yourself, surely the developers can't do anything worse. But no, they did much worse. What I'm about to talk about is one of the worst additions to come to Dragon Ball Legends. It's on the same level as them adding red stars and charging 21k CC for Zenkais. On September 12, 2025, they released Dende and Yajirobe as supporters. Supporters are additional characters that you can place on your team that give you stats and certain effects if conditions are met. Supporters as an idea isn't a bad thing. We thought it would be a way for them to give purpose to characters the Dragon Ball community doesn't really care about, but the way they implemented it is horrible for a number of reasons. Number 1, the availability of supporters. Supporters are only available on the banner that they come out on. However, recently they added a way for you to buy a supporter in the shop, and let me tell you right now, this is a complete scam for the price and the amount of supporter shards that you'll be getting from this pack. And I'll get into supporter shards later, but just know that this entire thing is a scam. Number 2, 1% sparking replacement. Supporters have also kind of replaced 1% sparkings on banners, which is downright idiotic. Certain characters they've released as supporters, such as Oob and Vegeta, should have been 1% characters to help flesh out their respective teams. I think they're doing this as they noticed that 1% characters rarely get used in PvP nowadays, whereas back in the day, 1% characters would be cornerstones for some of the best teams in the game. But the solution to this problem is very simple. Make 1% characters great again.
That's a great idea!
1% characters should fill certain roles on teams and be given enough stats and numbers to be competitively viable. Instead, we get the complete opposite most of the time. And number 3, the cost of supporters. The amount it costs to max out a supporter is ridiculous. The entire community couldn't believe their eyes once it was revealed that it would be required to pull a supporter 111 times.
What?
To get them to their max level. Or you could just pay a small fee of 11,000 Chrono Crystals to max them from the shop. This level of greed should get these developers in jail. The only good thing about supporters, and I'm saying good in quotations, is that they brought obscure characters to the game such as Baba, Belmod, and King Yenma. The support system has been out for a couple of months and it looks like they plan to make no improvements to the current system. They're so unbelievably lazy that the dog shit UI for supporters is still here. What is this UI? Who made this our reality? Please fire that person. And I'm sorry for my feelings to get, out of control there, but the supporter system, in my opinion, is easily the worst addition to this game. It came at a very bad time. It came out after the anniversary when the game was very dry and we needed something to boost the community spirits, and instead the supporter system made the community turn on the game, right? And once it was revealed, I never saw that many EOS statements on Twitter about Legends and this and that. Like, it was a bad vibe around the community when supporters got revealed, and I don't blame them. The system is trash. I want to talk about something that happened this year where Dragon Ball Legends was very obsessed with making changes to suit newer players while simultaneously screwing over older players. Changing the tournament power mode to incentivize players to get new units that are boosted rather than using old units is certainly a choice, Legends. They also reduced the amount of CC that you get from TOP as well. And I know some players are gonna say, ZVG, the CC amounts per month hasn't changed and all the other stuff. But my argument is that every year we should be getting more Chrono Crystals, because every year the power creep ramps up, more units come out, better units come out constantly. So the game should be giving us more CC instead of taking CC from somewhere and putting it elsewhere. That doesn't make any sense. Just keep the CC where it's at and then put more CC in another mode. It's that simple. I don't understand why we gotta take and give when we can just not take and give. They also decided to get rid of title boost effects in PvP. Titles would be attainable from co-op and they would increase the stats of your units, and they limited how faster older players could level supporters using rare medals, as it would be too unfair. And I don't really understand this, because as an older player, you shouldn't be punishing me for playing your game longer than the newer players. Like, the newer players are gonna come to the game, they're gonna play a couple games and dip out. The older players are the players who are sticking by you even through all the nonsense and the BS that you've done over the years. We're the ones here. We're the ones playing the game every day. We're the ones summoning. We're the ones talking about the game on Twitter. Newer players aren't doing that, because I definitely don't think that Legends is retaining newer players at a very high rate, which is probably why they went ahead and tried to do this. But newer players don't care about this stuff. Newer players want more CC. They want easy access CC. They want, less grinding. The game is a very grinding game if you're beginning out. I'm telling you, you gotta get Zenkais, you gotta get equipment. It's very grindy. So instead of trying to take things away from older players, how about instead you make the game easier for a newer player to get into? Just a thought. They also changed the battle system earlier in the year, which reduced the skill cap for the game, as any amount of backloading will reduce your advantage harshly. I think their assumption was this would remove passive play, but people just play passively at mid-range, especially with all these AoE green card units they keep releasing. And as a matter of fact, they released IT Goku immediately after they did the battle system change to promote the green cards famine. So Legends, you're scumbags. I will say though, the battle system did remove long range PVs, so at least there was some good in that update, but for the most part, it didn't need to be changed when it comes to how the vanishing works and backforwarding. For the final part of this video, I want to touch on Dragon Ball Legends Fest 2025. I think the character choices for this year's festival were pretty great. Gogeta and Janemba for part 1 was a great choice. Hiku and Gohan matched the hype of part 1. And Ultra Forku was a good choice for part 3. The issue in each part was that one of the units was trash compared to the other. Janemba and Hiku couldn't even come close to the dominance that Gogeta and Gohan would have on the meta. And I just think that units released in a celebration should be relative with each other, and when you have duds in 2 out of 3 parts of your festival, that kinda sucks. Another issue I have with this festival is the laziness of these units' design. We didn't get any new mechanic during the festival, which is disappointing. Hiku is a regular old tag unit, Gogeta Synchro Gauge the same one we had last year, and Gohan, as we all expected, is a very broken character. And Super Saiyan Goku does have a quote-unquote new mechanic, but we've had abilities that affect Rising Rush for a while now. And they also gave Goku 3 different freaking Kamehamehas for some reason. Overall though, Legends Fest 2025 was an upgrade to the 7th anniversary, but to be honest, the bar was in hell. But Legends Fest 2025 wasn't as good as it needed to be to cover up everything else that happened in the year. So for all these reasons, this is why I think that this year was the worst year for Dragon Ball Legends. I know that 2024 was also really bad due to the toxic metas that we had, and 2025 doesn't have as many toxic metas. However, I feel like 2025 stands out for the fact that they hyped up the year so much. They had the 7th anniversary and it truthfully flopped. Toji left us and Tani took over, and they added one of the worst systems ever, and they lied to us about their new philosophy, and that's exactly why I think 2025 is the worst year of Dragon Ball Legends.